Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Live with MECFS blog, and I'm here today to talk about something that is probably on everyone's minds because it's the start of a new year, and that's setting goals. So what I'm going to be talking about is excerpted from my book, Finding a New Normal, Living Your Best Life with Chronic Illness, and the last section in the book is Improving Your Life. And there are a couple of chapters there that I'm going to take pieces out of today. Setting goals when you're chronically ill, and also changing habits. Let me see. Strategies and tools for changing habits. Now, my book is all about life when you're living with a chronic medical condition or multiple chronic medical conditions. But honestly, the things that I'm talking about are actually applicable to anyone, anywhere, who struggles to set goals or make improvements in their life. These are practical tips and strategies that can help you, whether you are severely limited by a chronic illness or just a healthy person who struggles to set goals and achieve things. Now, because my focus is on chronic illness, I'm not talking about the kind of stuff that's all over the news right now. You turn on the television, you open a magazine, it's all this time of year about, making these huge changes in your life, about resolutions. Well, I have never really made resolutions. To me, what makes more sense is a goal-setting process where you take tiny steps. And that's why this can be used very effectively for people with chronic illness, even people who are severely limited. We're talking about baby steps toward how you want your life to be. I'm sure there are things all of us would like to change and improve, and particularly when you're living with chronic illness, you often just feel discouraged, like you have no control over your life. So this is a way to take control in small ways. So the way I arrived at this process is kind of interesting because it comes from my life before. Before I got sick in 2002, I had a very active career as a consultant and trainer in the fields of quality management and environmental management. My background's in chemical engineering, and I got into these fields that I loved because they were all about helping companies to improve and do the right thing. And I felt like I was really making a difference. In the latter part of my career, I was focused on environmental management. And part of that international standard was about setting goals. So I would go around and visit with different companies and help them understand how to do what was right for the environment in a way that was right for their company and would actually improve their bottom line. And the way the standard set this out was that you'd first figure out what the most important things to change were. In this case, it was your environmental impacts. And then within that, you would set objectives and targets for each one. And at some point, I realized that this process would work for my personal life. Before I had that insight, I was doing what most people do. I'd get all excited in January and set a bunch of goals and then forget about them. And December would come along and I'd look back at my list of goals and be disappointed I didn't achieve any of them. At some point, it occurred to me to use this strategy from my professional life for my personal life. And then, of course, I got sick in 2002, almost 21 years ago now. And for a few years, I just didn't even think about goals or improvement. I just thought, I'm going to get better, and then I can look at improvement. And of course, chronic illness doesn't really work that way. At some point, I realized once I got an accurate diagnosis, I realized this wasn't going away anytime soon. And it's really what my book is all about. You know, I had to find my new normal and figure out how I was going to continue living my life. And there were still things I wanted to do, although now health took a much larger spot in my life. So the first step in this easygoing goal setting process is to set lifetime goals for yourself. These are the things you most want out of your life, how you want your life to look. What are the things that are most important to you? What are your values? So for me, I set 6 lifetime goals. Well, originally I set 5. I'll tell you about that in a minute. So my lifetime goals are to have strong, fulfilling relationships with family and friends, to be a writer, writing about topics that interest me and contributing to my family's income, to travel and spend time outdoors with friends and family, doing things that I enjoy, to create and maintain a comfortable, happy, nurturing home environment, to be financially stable enough to take care of our family and reach our long-term goals. That's more of a joint goal with my husband. And to be healthy. So to be healthy was the 6th one that I added after I got sick. Because funny thing, when you're healthy, you don't even think about it. You have no idea that, that it's even a goal to be healthy because you take it for granted. But once I got sick, I realized I needed to focus on my health and on improving my situation and my quality of life. So with that exception, adding the healthy goal in there, my lifetime goals have been pretty much the same for more than 20 years. Some of them have changed a little bit over time in terms of how they're interpreted, like the one about a nurturing home environment. When my kids were young, of course, that had a whole different meaning to me. And now, of course, it's more about maintaining and improving our home itself so that my husband and I have a comfortable, happy environment to live in. So those are my lifetime goals. Yours might be entirely different. This involves just thinking about what's important to you and what you value in your life long term. Step 2 is to set specific objectives within each of those goals. So typically you will have multiple objectives for each goal, and those will change over time. As an example, my first goal to have strong, fulfilling relationships with family and friends. I have several objectives under that goal. Okay, well, I wrote the book before my husband retired. So my first was to spend more time with my husband. Now that we're together 24/7, I would say that objective has once again shifted a bit and developed into making sure that we spend quality time together, because we're together all the time, but it's not enough to just be in the house together and get on each other's nerves. I want to make sure that we're doing things together that help to nurture our relationship. So my first objective is quality time with my husband, to have fun with our kids who are now adults, to spend time with friends, and to stay in touch with distant family and friends. As another example, under my lifetime goal to be healthy, my objectives include to improve my health and my son's health, to become more active and improve my stamina. Now, I'm not talking about pushing myself past my limits like with graded exercise therapy. What I'm talking about here is that over time, I hope to find treatments and approaches that can help me to be more active without crashing. So it's working within my limits. Another objective is to reduce stress and rest more, and to make time for myself, which is something I really need to work on still, even after all these years. So you see how this is not your typical New Year's resolution kind of thing. You don't usually hear the Today Show talking about, setting resolutions to rest more. But for me, and I think that would be even better rewritten to say to listen to my body. so that I rest when I need to rest. So anyway, those are some examples of my objectives for my lifetime goals. Yours will be different. Step 3 is really the key to success, and that's to set measurable targets within each objective. So, and again, this is taken directly from my work with companies for environmental management. If I just left it with those objectives, to reduce stress and rest more, for instance, I'd set that at the beginning of the year, and at the end of the year feel like I didn't really do anything toward that. The idea is to set specific measurable targets, baby steps. And this is where this approach is perfect for those with chronic illness or chronic medical conditions. We're not talking about a giant leap forward, about running a marathon or, some of the bigger resolutions you hear about. This is more about taking tiny, manageable steps toward making the improvements that you want to see in your life. So continuing with those examples, I'll tell you some of my targets from last year. I haven't finished setting my targets for this year yet. I go through this whole process. I'm a very analytical person, so what I do, the way that I do these things isn't necessarily what will work for you, but the general strategy still works for anyone. So I have this whole process of reviewing the previous year, seeing what went well, which targets I met, which I didn't meet, and what I want to happen in the new year. So under my goal of having strong, fulfilling relationships, and within my objective to connect with family and friends, these are the specific targets I had last year. Get together or connect with a friend at least once a week. This is a huge one for me and something that greatly improves my life, but is of course hard to do because of my limitations with this illness. This past year was a really rough year with 2 major relapses. But you notice I said get together or connect with. If I'm not feeling up to meeting a friend, then texting a good friend or talking on the phone for 10 minutes, those count too. And I know those things enrich my life. Another target is, 2 targets. To call my mom twice a month and to call or touch base with my stepmom at least once a month. And these things, these are people important in my life and people that I want to make sure that I'm connected with. Another target from last year under connect with friends and family was to connect with a distant family member once a month. We live in a state where none of our family lives, so in order to stay connected with family, it's important to reach out. And again, this doesn't mean like an hour-long phone call or something. It means sending a note to a friend, sending a birthday card with a note written in it, or texting. My next target is to connect with a distant friend once a month. So one way that I do this within my limitations, my best friend from childhood, Michelle, we've known each other since she was 4 and I was 5. We've been best friends all that time, but we don't live in the same state. And we've only seen each other once in like the last 10 years. She came to visit me last year for my birthday. But we came up with this really fun thing. We both love watching The Amazing Race. So when it's on, if possible, we watch it together. If not, then we watch it separately. But we text each other about what's happening and about what's going on in the race and what we would do if we were in the race. All purely hypothetical, of course, because I could never be in The Amazing Race now. But it's a fun way to connect with an old friend that I don't get to see very often. So things like that come under these targets that I've set. Now, when I started using this process in my personal life, for a while, even with specific measurable targets, I found that I still wasn't always getting these things done and achieving what I wanted to. And so I realized I was missing a step. Again, looking back to my quality management and environmental management days, I realized I wasn't tracking my progress. And that's why I could set an objective and then, months later realize I hadn't done anything. So it's really important to measure your progress. And this can be whatever works for you. Now, as I said, I'm very analytical. I printed this off from my Excel spreadsheet with my goals from last year on it and my objectives and targets. That's how I work. But you have to do what works for you. So some people like to use an app. Some people just like to jot something down in a journal at the end of the day. Some way to keep track of your progress. And this doesn't have to be a lot of work. It might be taking a quick look at your objectives and targets at the end of each day or at the beginning of each week. In fact, even if you're not taking notes, just rereading your objectives and targets on a regular basis will help you to keep them foremost in your mind so that you don't lose track of what you want to be doing. It is so easy. I struggle with this so much. It's so easy to get caught up in the minutia and the maintenance of everyday life. What are we going to have for dinner? Oh, that reminds me, I forgot to take something out of the freezer. See what I mean? We're caught up in what are we having for dinner tonight? What groceries do I need to order? All these little things that are required to get through our days. And that makes it hard to work on these bigger goals and objectives. But it's really important. This is how you add meaning to your life. This is how you bring joy to your life. In other chapters in my book, I talk about finding small joys in every day, taking on new interests or hobbies that fit with your more restricted life. Those kind of things can be put into your objectives and targets to help enrich your life and add more joy. So here's one more example of my measurable targets within objectives. I mentioned earlier that one of my objectives under to be healthy is to reduce stress, improve rest, and take better care of myself. So my targets under that objective are to turn my computer off by 7:30 every evening. I know that it wears me down to be online, and I spend a lot of time on my computer during the day. So that target to by 7:30 every night, that's when Jeopardy ends. We're done with dinner by then, and I'm getting ready to watch a couple of TV shows with my husband. So I set it down, I plug it in for the night, and I move to the couch, which is where I need to be in the evening anyway. And this helps me not to overdo. Another of my targets is to rest when my symptoms flare. So for me, again, very analytical. At the end of each day, I jot down a number from 1 to 5 of how I'm feeling. So this for me is if I'm feeling worse than a 3, if I'm feeling a 4 or a 5 that day. And this is, we each have our own criteria for when we're crashed or flared up. For me, often that means if I've got any flu-like aches, if I've got any sore throat, if I'm especially worn out or tired, those kind of days, I know that I should rest. And sometimes I keep pushing myself. So that's why this is a target for me. And honestly, I didn't do that well last year, even though it's been a target forever. But this is something I keep working on, not to push myself. So you see how this is chronic illness goals. My target here is to do less and not to push myself to be productive and achieve something when I know that my body's telling me I need to rest. Another target is to take one day off each month. That means to me a day when I have no responsibilities. It might be when we're on vacation. If we don't have any trips planned, then I need to think about how do I take some time off for myself. This is a real challenge and sticking point for me. I do tend to focus too much on trying to get things done. I've got long lists of targets related to writing that I'm not going to bore you with, but there are always things that I want to do. And so it's really important for my overall health and well-being to take time out for myself, which, as you'll remember, was one of my objectives. So another thing is that I do 2 fun things each week. Another thing I really struggle with, if I do get a chance to meet up with a friend, that would certainly count. Sometimes on weekends, my husband and I will get together with friends, even if it's just having takeout in our family room or around a campfire outside. Other fun things that I never take enough time for that I want to might be things like working on a jigsaw puzzle with my husband, or lying down and doing a crossword puzzle, or lying down and having extra reading time. My life is pretty structured, and so that's why it's important that I set a target to have a little time for fun each week. So those examples from my own objectives and targets are mine personally. Yours are going to be different. Your objectives and your targets need to be based on your own desires in life, the things you want to do, the things you want to have more of in your life, and also your own challenges. I know I have trouble stopping work and making time for relaxation, which I know sounds crazy when I'm so limited because of my illness, but that actually puts more pressure on me because my productive time each day is so limited. So these kind of objectives and targets are really important for me, to make time for relationships, to make time for myself, to take care of myself. So within that structure of lifetime goals, objectives, and targets, I just want to quickly run through a few strategies, practical tips, and tools that can help, particularly if you're trying to change a habit. Habits are called habits for a reason. Usually they are deeply ingrained, and trying to change a habit can be really challenging, as not just people with chronic illness, but everyone at this time of year knows that. So again, you go back to the kind of traditional thing that you're hearing about everywhere at this time of year, to, lose 20 pounds, eat healthy, and those kind of goals are too broad. You need the specific objectives and measurable targets to help you meet those. But if you're trying to change habits, well, for starters, think small. And again, we're talking baby steps here. If you can change one tiny piece of a habit and make that stick for a month or two, then that will be a part of your life, and then you can move on to another. So remember to think small, which works great for us. This is what works most effectively for changing habits, but it's also what we have to do because we can't think big. Another critical thing is to write it down. And as I said, you can choose whatever approach works for you. Jotting some notes in a journal at the end of the day, using an app. For me, it's an Excel spreadsheet. But somehow write down your objectives and your targets. Write down your lifetime goals. Look at these things frequently and remind yourself of what you want to achieve. Another tip is to learn more about what you want to accomplish. If you want to improve your diet, go online and read a little bit about what kind of diets are best for someone with your medical condition. Ask other people with your condition what has worked well for them. Gather some information. Another tip, and I have found this really effective, is to link a new habit to an existing habit. So for example, I have a pretty set morning routine. Get up, brush my teeth, either wash my face or take a shower, put in my contacts, put lotion on my face, get dressed, and go downstairs for breakfast. So a couple of years ago, I was noticing that when I did some gentle yoga stretches on the floor, very low key, not getting my heart rate up, I noticed it helped me feel better. So since for me personally, my best time of day is the morning, things go downhill from noon on. So when I wanted to make doing a few yoga stretches a part of my routine, I knew it would work best if I linked it to my existing morning routine. So I put in my yoga stretches after washing my face or taking a shower and before I got dressed to go downstairs. And it has worked wonderfully by linking it up with a set routine that I already have. It has, over the last 2 years, become a habit. And it's gotten to the point where it's not going to be a new target. It's not going to be carried over as a target for me in 2023 because it has become a daily habit. I did it. I did 10 to 15 minutes of gentle yoga stretches every single day last year, even the days when I was badly crashed, sometimes modified, of course, sometimes lying down instead of, kneeling or sitting up. But it's become a part of my habits now because I linked it up with part of my routine or my old habits. Another good tip and strategy is to know yourself. What will work for you? So I'm giving you examples, but you really have to think about your own life and what works for you. In my yoga example, for some people, mornings are the worst and they would never try to do, and they never should try to do something like stretches in the morning. For them, maybe the afternoon is a better time or even before bed. But for me, given the way my body works right now, morning was the best time. Another example comes from Gretchen Rubin. I don't know if you've heard of her, if you've read any of her books. She authored The Happiness Project and many other books since then, including one on setting habits. She's got a wonderful podcast called Happier, which I love listening to. And she talks about different ways she calls it know yourself better. And she's got all these different categories. So for instance, whether you are an abstainer or a moderator, if you're trying to give up or reduce sugar, which would work better for you? Deciding to have one square of really good dark chocolate at the end of the day, or not having any chocolate at all. So are you the kind of person that can, as I do, keep some bars of good chocolate in the house and have one square in the evening with my herbal tea every night? This is what I do. That would mean you're a moderator. Or are you the kind of person that if the chocolate's in the house, you're eating it? And in that case, you'd be better off abstaining completely and not bringing it into the house. So knowing yourself is very important as you're setting goals and objectives and targets and trying to change habits. And finally, just keep trying. Don't get discouraged if you set a target and you don't meet it. As I said, there are some targets like resting when I'm crashed or flared that have taken me years to get better at, and I'm still not where I want to be. The old adage, try again, is an old saying for a good reason. It actually works. Don't give up. Be persistent. Be patient with yourself. And, you can get where you want to be. So I wanted to give you one more set of examples that use all of these kind of strategies and tips. One thing that's high on many people's priority list at this time of year is improving their diet, particularly if you live with chronic illness. There is loads of research that what we eat does affect our health. If you've got a multi-system illness like ME/CFS, then it's even more important that you eat healthy, because what you eat can have a great impact on how you feel. And we've discovered this in our own lives, certainly. So let's say you have a goal to eat healthier. This is the year you want to try to eat healthier. So break that down. Let's say one of your objectives is to eat more fruits and vegetables, which, by the way, is a great way to start to get a healthier diet. Instead of subtracting things, try first adding things. Get in the habit of eating more fruits and vegetables. And then you can set some very specific targets that will work in your life, given your limitations. So if your objective is to eat more fruits and vegetables, you might set target number 1, buy frozen fruits and vegetables and pre-cut produce to make sure that these healthier things are around and ready to use, to cut back on the time that you would need to spend preparing them. Target 2, maybe ask a friend or family member to help you make a big pot of soup at the beginning of the week. Something with lots of vegetables in it, or a stew or a chili, something healthy that you can use for lunches and dinners throughout the week, or even breakfast. Target 3 might be make your breakfast healthier by adding fruits and vegetables. Add fruit to your oatmeal or cereal. Add fruit and vegetables to your smoothies. Add vegetables to your eggs. That might sound weird to you, but that's what we do. These are just examples of some specific measurable targets. And if you go back to my point about keeping track, if one of your objectives is to eat more fruits and vegetables, then make a little checklist for yourself, or jot a little note at the end of the day in a journal or on an app about how many fruits and how many vegetables you had that day. Make it kind of a game for yourself to try to improve your score. Measuring your progress really helps. So those are just some more examples. The important thing to recognize here is simply that goal setting and chronic illness are not mutually exclusive. You can make improvements in your life if you focus on tiny baby steps, setting measurable targets that are in line with your lifetime goals, actually measuring, taking a look at how you're doing and what progress you're making. All of these things can help you to meet your own goals in life, whether that's to take better care of yourself, to eat healthier, to spend more time with loved ones, or to stay connected with loved ones, which is often a little more realistic for us than more time together. Whatever is important to you, you can set goals and objectives and targets that will work for you, and using these kind of strategies and tips. So I am finished with my 2022 review personally, and I'm getting ready to set my targets for 2023. So I'm going to look at what worked last year, what didn't work, what I'd like to improve on in the coming year. And I hope that you find these tips and strategies helpful for you as well. And please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Share some objectives or targets that you have for yourself, what's most important to you, what has worked for you in the past and what hasn't worked for you in the past. I'd love to hear about it.